Although the Pokemon franchise is most known for its Pokemon, there is also a diverse cast of trainer characters that sometimes become just as loved or notorious. A decent chunk of these trainers are made up of evil organizations headed by even more evil leaders, but only one can claim to be the first: Team Rocket and their suit-wearing schemer, Giovanni. And while I love determining the canonical first Pokemon of various categories across the games, today we are starting a new series that is just as sinister as the Rocket leader himself, seeing just how fast we can recreate Giovanni's entire team from scratch, including levels, movesets, and more in the original generation. For this challenge, we of course need to begin by reviewing Giovanni's team while going over some ground rules. In total, Giovanni is faced 3 times in Red and Blue, with an appropriately upgraded team each time. And the first thing to note here is that each team doesn't simply build up on the previous, but also takes away. For example, Onix being gone after the first encounter, and Kangaskhan after the second. As such, we won't simply be sticking to the final team, but rather need to obtain every Pokemon Giovanni owns. Now this could go one of 2 ways. Either we treat all 12 Pokemon battled as unique, or we determine if any returning Pokemon or those in its evolution line could be the same. This second option saves us the headache of getting too many dupes, but also feels more in spirit of a reoccurring character, even if a villain. So to be deemed the same Pokemon or line for the challenge, consecutive appearances will need to have equal or increasing levels, which is luckily always the case for Giovanni's team, but also any updates to their movesets must be possible to obtain. So for instance, Kangaskhan is used in the first and second battles, at levels 29 and 35 respectively. In the first, it only has the 3 level up moves possible at that point, while in the second, it only adds the next move learned at 31, Tail Whip, meaning we only need to catch a single Kangaskhan in our run and require just its level up moveset. The Rhyhorn line is also pretty straightforward, with Rhyhorn itself being Giovanni's most frequently used Pokemon, having 1 appearance in each battle as well as an extra ride-on in the final fight. Luckily, the reappearing Rhyhorn's moveset consists of just its level up moves available at each encounter, and Rhydon only adds in Fissure, the TM we receive for defeating Giovanni, thus we just need a Rhyhorn and a Dawn to account for these. Now for the Nidos, Queen appears in the latter 2 battles, and makes things simple with identical movesets. But here's where things get strange, as you might assume that the Nidorino, also introduced in Silph would evolve into his Nidoking from the gym battle, but this is impossible based on their movesets, since King replaces Focus Energy and Fury Attack with Tackle and Thrash. Now it's likely this was done due to Nidoking only having these moves in its level up set, especially since Trainers' movesets only appear to have the latest 4 available from level up outside of gym leaders teaching their reward TM to 1 Pokemon. But as far as things go in Gen 1, Giovanni's Nidorino and Nidoking technically can't be the same, so we will stick to getting both. And keep in mind, this Nidoking can't be the one we use to carry us through any amount of the game, since it won't have room for all, if any, of these terrible moves. Finally though, we have the Pokemon with single team appearances, Onix and Dugtrio, both with their expected level up movesets, leaving us with a total of 8 Pokemon to deal with in order to become the ultimate boss. But before we go any further, it looks like we are getting a call. And thankfully it's from today's sponsor, Raycon Everyday Earbuds. Personally, I'm a huge fan of earbuds, and Raycon's latest models have everything you could want and more, from 32 hours of battery life to pairing with multiple devices at once. On top of that, Raycon's active noise cancellation is perfect when traveling or for blocking out other nuisances. And as an aspiring Team Rocket boss, I need to stay productive, which my Raycons support by letting me easily switch between editing on my PC to listening to music while taking care of things like cooking, exercising, or the pets. But what I might love most is that just like shorts, they're both comfortable and easy to wear, especially thanks to their earbud tap functionality. Plus, you can even customize your experience with a variety of colors and unique protective cases which also support wireless charging. And Raycons make a perfect Valentine's gift for any partner. All you have to do is go to buyraycon.com/samaj or click my link in the description box below to get up to 20% off your entire Raycon order. So now let's quickly cover the general location and highest viable level for each team member. Starting with Onyx, whose only encounters within the level cap are in Rock Tunnel, the highest of which being at 17. Dugtrio meanwhile has literally only one location, found along with Diglett inside their cave at a max of 31. This leaves us with the Rhyhorn line, Nido line, and Kangaskhan, all of which can be found within one location, the Safari Zone. And while we do need a single Rhydon, which have their own encounters, those are only in Cerulean Cave at levels 55 and 52, above our level 50 target, forcing us to get 2 Rhyhorns in the Safari Zone at a max level of only 26. Now, Kangaskhan is also restricted to the zone in these games at either levels 25 or 28, however the 3 Nidos are a bit more interesting. In general, the zone holds the highest level encounters for any Nido, with Nidorina at 31 and Nidorino at 33, in red specifically, with all Nido level and rate combinations flipped on blue version. However, there is somehow another problem for Nidoking, as if you recall, it needs Thrash, a non-TM move which it only learns at level 23, and since we can't catch the Stone Evos, our only options are a 23 and below Nidorino or a 22 and below Nidoran M. While the prior are only encounterable in the zone at 30 and above, the latter can be caught exactly at 22 in Red's Safari Zone. But if we were on blue, our only options for this king would be the level 3 or 4 on Route 22, further solidifying Red. Now in terms of the other 2 we need, the 33 Nidorino encounter works perfectly. However, Nidoqueen also needs its evolution-specific level 23 move, Body Slam, but this is thankfully teachable by TM and simply found on the SS-An. Since Nidorina won't lose any of its required learn set moves until 41, the zone's 31 is perfect. Or it would be if not for one final option, as we can actually trade a Nidorino for Nidorina on Route 11, and this option has some huge benefits. First, since the received Mon's level matches what we traded, this lets us grab a second 33 Nidorino to skip 2 levels. Furthermore, Nidorino's encounter rate is double that of Nidorina, thus we won't have to worry about the rarer encounter nor a specific repel trick. But most importantly, traded Pokemon get a 1.5 experience boost, which makes dealing with a quick trip and required trainer more than worth it given the previous benefits and 11 sped up levels, wrapping up the general location and team details for the run. But before going further to route any repel tricks that we'll need, particularly for Mons with competitive level options, we want to know how much time picking the higher level catches saves or costs us, meaning we first need to cover what is likely the most intimidating portion of this challenge, grinding. In total, we need around 380,000 experience to have the available Pokemon options match Geo's team, and thus optimizing this grind is critical. The obvious conclusion with the limited options of Gen 1 is to use the Elite Four, but as always, we will need to prove this. Technically, grinding can start as soon as we get any of Giovanni's Pokemon, and all of them can be obtained as soon as we have the Pokeflute to reach the Safari Zone, but this is far from optimal, as although we still have a variety of locations to choose from, with the best average experience per battle right after Koga being in the Pokemon Mansion on Cinnabar at around 1984 experience per minute, this is only the case if we are one-shotting every Pokemon with the Mon to be trained, which is almost never possible for any matchups given the low levels and terrible movesets we are restricted to. And if we instead were to switch train in this same location, we will end up with just 705 experience per minute, due to the time for switching and getting less than half of each battle's experience thanks to how rounding factors into the calculation. Furthermore, the experience all is not going to help us out here, since we would need to catch 50 total Pokemon to even obtain it, still lose some experience to rounding, and our lead non-Giovanni Pokemon also gets a chunk of the split experience, meaning in the best case scenario with a full party, we lose 1/6 of the experience compared to switch training and gain only around a second in time, which would drop the mansion rate all the way down to just 568 experience per minute. But jumping back to that switch training rate, and given the approximate experience we need, this would take about 9 hours, with the only other options before the Elite Four that can beat this being Victory Road's 3rd floor under a level 26 repel trick for an estimated 7.7 hours. So instead, we need to follow the speedrun past Koga, tacking on about 30 more minutes to beat the rest of the game, at which point we can check that final gauntlet and beyond. Now, I say beat the game because although you can technically calculate the experience rate from the Elite Four without ever reaching the credits, since it's faster to lose on Blue's final Mon, get a free heal, and dodge the otherwise unskippable end roll anyways, a speedrun Nidoking, albeit strong, is not going to be able to take a hit from every Mon if switch training proves optimal. The clear solution to this in Gen 1 is to simply follow the speedrun strats through the full game to unlock the fastest Pokemon for the grind, Mewtwo, only adding 5 more minutes to the end of the game. This legend is particularly perfect as it's the strongest Mon that can be obtained this quickly and utilize self-destruct, a move which Nidoking can't even learn. And yes, we need self-destruct, not only as it allows us to reset a league run in less than 30 seconds, but it will then provide the full experience to our switched out Mon. This technique in particular is used to finish off some grinding for evolutions in the Red 124 catch speedrun, and highlights how we can actually end a league run at just about any point we choose. Now, in a 124 run, this is done to get exactly how much experience you need to evolve, wipe, and then move to the next Mon for training, but only for a handful of Pokemon at lower levels overall. However, in our scenario needing far more experience, we need to determine where to self-destruct and lose at repeatedly to get the highest average experience per minute. But before jumping into those numbers, there is one more area to cover that is unlocked by beating the game, exactly where we found Mewtwo, Cerulean Cave. Specifically, the lowest floor is without a doubt the best EXP rate per minute for wild battles in these games, providing a whopping 1557 experience without needing any repels. This would require us a little over 4 hours of grinding through switch training, but it is certainly the best we have seen thus far, so let's see if the Elite Four can beat it. Now, we already have a few of the possible experience rates, as the 124 run utilizes self-destructs on both Jynx and Machamp, which results in an expected 1954 and 1685 experience per minute respectively, both of which already outpace that best wild battle option. Now, the slower Machamp rate is used specifically to get enough experience for an evolution and survive, since losing would otherwise prevent this. But aside from this case, or reaching a target Mon's final level, we will want to use the fastest rate possible at all times. Thus, I estimated an approximate time for ending the run at all other possible spots. Of course, there are a few caveats here. First of all, we can't do this on any of Agatha's ghosts, since they are immune to self-destruct. And secondly, even with Mewtwo's high level and overpowered stats, alongside self-destruct effectively having 260 power, we can't one-shot everything. In fact, of the 22 Pokemon we can self-destruct on, only 8 of them are guaranteed one-shots. 3 are in our favor, and 1, Blue's Gyarados, is possible but not likely. So for any of the Pokemon that we can't one-shot, we simply add on an extra turn for damage to the estimate, leaving us with 22 possible rates, all of which end up within the 4-hour range for our experience total, and reveal an extremely interesting winner in Cloyster, due to it providing the second highest experience before Lance's Aerodactyl that isn't a final Pokemon, and being after only one other Mon, Dugong, who also drops a solid amount of experience. However, we do have one more method to add, that being the EXP All, as it is more lucrative with higher experience drops. But because we still need to lose to Blue to avoid wasting about 3 minutes to the unskippable post-victory scenes, and it wastes around 30 extra seconds to get a full team KO'd, the experience All sits at around 9th place, and that's again before even considering getting the 30 plus additional Pokemon required for it in the first place. Thus, we end up with a quick pair of knockouts against Lorelei as the fastest way to grind our team in the game. However, there are a couple issues we haven't dug into yet, as these estimates assume that switching Mewtwo in, dealing any necessary damage, self-destructing, and getting our Mon in training knocked out each take a single turn and don't have any significant delays. However, there are plenty of scenarios across the league where this could be made more difficult, and Cloyster's moveset in particular is not at all helpful for this. To start, as many probably know, trainers such as the Elite Four are programmed to use moves it thinks are super effective against us and will otherwise randomly select from its move pool, aside from some cases not relevant here. And with none of Cloyster's moves deemed super effective against Mewtwo, the selected move will be random, leaving us with only a 43% chance to get out of this without additional time loss in the cases of Aurora Beam, a miss, or a hit supersonic failing. The other 50% of the time is a nightmare, with each Spike Cannon wasting 2.6 to 10.4 seconds, Clamp 3.3 to 13.2 seconds, and a Turn Confused 4.2 seconds, before even accounting for before Cloyster then getting another turn. After running the numbers against the approximate 150 times we would need to battle Lorelei, this adds up to an average time loss of almost 7 minutes. And while this would still keep Cloyster in the lead, there's somehow an even bigger problem: Slowbro knocking us out. In particular, the variety and lack of damaging moves against our team leaves the odds to even deal damage only 50% for Onyx, Dugtrio, and the Rhyhorns, 33% for the fully evolved Nidos, 25% for Kangaskhan, and 0 for Nidorino. When factoring the amount of battles each of these groups require across the grind, and about 5 seconds per failed KO, we would lose over 14 minutes simply trying to end each run here, before even considering changing strategies for Nidorino. Combined with Cloyster's 7 minutes, this route falls far short of what it could be if the moves were in our favor. Oh, and remember, Cloyster also requires a turn of damage before self-destruct can even knock it out, meaning we have to tack on another 7 minutes to it. But then where does this leave our second place contender, losing to Lapras? Well, our new self-destruct target would be Jinx, who is a one-hit knockout, so it only has the switch-in turn to hit Mewtwo, but it also has a variety of problem moves, with Ice Punch's 10% freeze, Body Slam's 30% paralysis, or its own multi-hit move, Double Slap. However, we now have a 65% chance of escaping without any wasted time, compared to Cloyster's 44%. Furthermore, while we still expect to waste about 1 minute and 45 seconds to the 25% chance for its multi-hit move, the only other outcome are a 10% total chance that we are statused by Body Slam or Ice Punch, both of which are curable with full heals that can be bought from the league cashier before starting the grind. And given a status should only occur about 8 times, we can expect to lose just half a minute from Jinx's extra turns. But what is truly great is that the preceding KO is far more consistent than Slowbro's, since Lapras will only be able to use damaging moves on our team, aside from Nidorino, who needs the second lowest amount of experience anyways. And although Hydro Pump and Blizzard combined miss 25% of the time, that still leaves us with 75% of our ground type whiteout turns to go as calculated, resulting in less than 3 minutes of lost time here, which in combination with Jinx leaves us plenty ahead of Cloyster. But it's now a minute behind the initial Dugong calculation. In fact, we actually need to tack on 5 more minutes to the Lapras loss, as inherently any run that switch trains against Cloyster will lose time based on the number of encounters, and self-destructing on Dugong doesn't even have this issue. However, even that run can't escape Cloyster's wrath, since we would then rely on it to KO us, and despite a guaranteed super effective damaging move against all of our ground types, that move is the dreaded Clamp 50% of the time, which still wastes time on half of these mons. Plus, since we now need to face the monster about 187 times, Clamp wastes around 4.8 minutes on just those ground types. Further, Kangaskhan and Nidorino are complete RNG, just like Mewtwo, meaning that even if we are generous and give Kangaskhan an average of just 2 turns to get knocked out each time, this still puts Dugong behind by about a minute. And this is before even considering that Nidorino should always waste more time here than on Lapras, since there are less odds for a one-shot, and will require more than double the number of encounters, which ends up putting Lapras back on top, but is now essentially tied for first with going all the way to Blue's final Pokemon, except that this is ignoring the potential for any of the other encounters to cause time losses across this route and its 15 required runs, for example the Jinx switch we just covered, nor does it account for any extra healing that could be needed with Mewtwo soaking up far more hits and crits, finally leaving Lapras as the clear winner. A grinding solution of switch training against Lorelei until Jinx, where we self-destruct and let Lapras send us back outside to do it all again, 80 more times. So now we can finalize each of our team member catches. A good place to start is with Dugtrio and Diglett Cave, which can be made a 100% encounter by using a repel trick that is easily turned on by either the run's Nidoking, a Rhyhorn, or Kangaskhan. But while this guarantees a Dugtrio, its level will have 2 options, 29 or 31, at a 78 and 22% rate respectively. And since this repel trick leaves us at an encounter every 33 seconds, it will take about 2.5 minutes to find a level 31 on average. Now, thanks to having our estimated rate of experience per minute, we know that the 5,402 experience lost by catching a 29 costs us about 3 minutes, meaning it is in our favor to shoot for a higher level trio. But over in Rock Tunnel, Onyx is a bit of a different case, having its highest level at 17 on the lower floor, which also happens to be the more likely floor for Onyx encounters. Now, a repel trick here can only bring the odds for this Onyx up to about the same 9% we have when going for either level, and we wouldn't even have a mon to set up up the trick. However, any encounter on this floor that isn't Onyx can repel trick out the lower level one. And since it only takes around 20 seconds to set up compared to the extra 1.5 minutes worth of grinding the 2 levels, while requiring just a couple extra balls and repels, the trick route is indeed optimal here, which means we can move on to our Safari encounters, where it is always best to just throw balls for the highest chance of a catch in all of our cases, and almost any other due to the poor support provided by rocks and bait, as well as the available Pokemon's flee rates, all of which is walked through amazingly in the Cave of Dragonflies write-up and calculator, which was used extensively for the following section. With that, let's start at the most difficult catch of the zone and challenge, Kangaskhan, as even when being in 2 areas, both with repel tricks to up the odds, the best we can get is only an 8.6% in Area 2 at level 25. Sadly though, this is the lower level option, with the other being at 28 in Area 4 at only a 7.5% rate under a repel trick. This higher level Kangaskhan has a few other factors working against it too. Aside from the minor 0.2% lower catch rate, there is a 5% higher flee rate, along with the terrain of the level 28 trick being down to 16% per step versus the 50% rate of the 25. And with the difficulty of this catch in general, combined with the constraints of the Safari Zone and repel usages, these two differences add up, leading to a whopping 19 extra minutes on average to find and have a successful catch of the 28. Of course, going for the level 25 will require 6,327 more experience, but it will only take around 3.5 minutes to grind to that level, far less than the time that could be wasted in the zone. The repel trick is also clearly worthwhile since not using it would cost us almost 10 minutes, which leaves plenty of time to use repels and grab them on for the trick. Speaking of, while there are plenty of options for the level 25 mon we need, this will also be optimal within the Safari Zone, as each area contains at least one option, and the best is easily accessible in Area 1, as both Execute and the also needed Rhyhorn have a combined 30% encounter rate at this level. Area 1 is also one of 2 with a 20% chance at our level 22 Nidoran, further making it the ideal spot to grab our Trick Setter. And with that, plus the expected 80 encounters for a caught Kangaskhan, we are likely to find our level 33 Nidorans along the way, thanks to their 20% encounter rate under the trick. But that still leaves the exact Rhyhorn plan, as even if Area 1 gives us a Nidoran and Rhyhorn for the Trick Setter, we need at least one more, which ideally would be Area 3's level 26 horn. Now Area 3 is a bit further away than 1 or 2 at first, but if we make sure to do all of our Safari visits after beating Koga, we can simply surf to 3 after getting the HM from our first trip, leaving our Safari Zone trip with just the single repel trick and all the Pokemon we need for the final catches. But there is one more question to solve in the Safari Zone, because repel tricking and hunting the low odds Kangaskhan against 2 step counters requires planning our movement. Thus, we need to compare the fastest movement speed of biking versus the classic Safari Zone trick of spinning in place, which doesn't reduce our Safari or repel steps. From my testing, this can be done at a rate of about 4 to 5 spins per second, which if we are generous and use the faster pace, leaves us a bit ahead of the biking rate at 16 minutes on average. However, at 4 spins per second, this already falls behind by about 30 seconds, and since the spinning method can bleed more time across its duration due to easier mistakes, the biking method will be optimal for anyone without electrode level speeds. And do keep in mind when hunting to stay in grass that actually has encounters, as this is one of 2 locations in the game where not all grass tiles contain them, the other being Viridian Forest, as discussed in our first Pokemon video. Thankfully, this is no problem for our lengthy Area 2 hunt, where the first and longest stretch of grass is normal, but must simply be known for the other areas and their short hunts. Thus, after getting a Trick Setter and finishing up Kangaskhan, we head to Area 3 for at least one Rhyhorn and finish collecting our base Giovanni team to train later against Lorelei. However, even after covering all of the catches and grinding, there are still some details we need to cover, most of which involve items. Yes, Giovanni has his own set of in-battle items we need to grab, however those are not entirely what I'm referring to. In particular, we haven't mentioned any of the rare candies left over from the speedrun, of which there are 8 in total. All of these would ideally be used on our Rhyhorns, which are in the slowest experience group, and end up requiring more experience per level from 41 on than even the next longest level in Nidoking game's final. Further, we know how much time each level can save, with the fastest, 43 to 44, still taking almost 4 minutes, which is longer than the time to get any of the other Kanto candies, making them all worth it. But there are a few other things to grab, as although Body Slam on the SSN was already mentioned for Nidoqueen, we of course need 2 Moonstones to evolve it and King. Luckily, there are 2 clear choices, the first being hidden towards the end of Mount Moon, and the second hidden on the 5th pillar in the Pokemon Mansion. Now our Solomon also requires 3 items. First, we of course need the Master Ball, which a speedrun doesn't actually need, but this is simply grabbed after beating Giovanni in Silph.Co. Second, the Self-Destruct TM, which can also be obtained in Silph.Co. All we need to do is stop on floor 3 during our initial climb and hit the warp point to find an NPC who gifts the item before returning to the route. And third, we want to pick up Thunderwall in the power plant for its candy, as this gives us the fastest way to knock out Slowbro on average, and we need to use Thunderbolt for beating the game to begin with. Now for what Giovanni has access to, he can use 1 guard spec per Pokemon across each battle, which adds up to 12 in total. While there's only 1 we could pick up in the entire game, we can simply purchase these. However, there's also only 1 seller, the Celadon department store. This will cost 8,400 money, which we won't have to spare during our first and only planned trip here. However, when we fly back later to take down Erica, we will have enough extra funds to simply make the purchase and continue on. But we can utilize this trip for the last item related detail we have, as Dugtrio and Onix need a bit of preparation due to their low catch rates and our limited options early on. Specifically, we can only get 2 Great Balls before reaching Vermilion or Rock Tunnel. However, we won't have quick access to Onix aside from our initial trip, compared to Diglett Cave, which we will need to walk right by when going for our Nido trade anyways. Thus, we will use the pair of Great Balls for Onix and wait to get Trio until after that second Celadon trip, where we can also stock up on more Great Balls. But all of these extra items leave us with a new problem, because in Gen 1, our bag caps out at just 20. Normally the speedrun won't hit this cap, but we will before even leaving Silph.Co. However, this is also where the solution to the issue lies. Normally we would need to make an extra stop at a center to deposit some of our items, but another feature of the top floor where we beat Giovanni is a PC, letting us deposit not only all of our unnecessary key items, but also our Rock Tunnel catches to make as much room in our party as possible for our Safari Trick Setter. And this stop leaves enough room in our bag for the rest of the run without a second, wrapping up our item requirements and leaving us with one last topic: level up evolutions. While we only have 2 of these, Rhydon and Nidorino, if the level Amon evolves at is hit during a battle, it can only evolve if we win, which is never planned during our grind. And what's more is our little level 22 Nidoran can't gain more than 2,630 experience before having both of its evolutions in order to learn Thrash at 23, meaning for its first league run we could only switch train against 2 of Lorelai's Pokemon and would have to win to evolve to Nidorino, both of which waste time. However, there's a perfect answer for this, because in Cerulean Cave we can't actually repel out any of the encounters on Mewtwo's floor, since Nidoking would only be at 55. Thus, we can utilize these necessary encounters as switch training for Nidoran until it hits 23. And with this, we actually never need to deal with an evolution within the league battles, since Rhyhorn will be fed rare candies, which do of course trigger the evolution, leaving us with everything we need to become the boss of Team Rocket. To finally put the run together, for the main game we mostly follow the speedrun, with some Giovanni additions made where optimal. First starting in Mount Moon, where we grab the extra Moon Stone, and outside of it for the first Great Ball. Then on the SSN we make sure to get Body Slam, the first free candy, and our second Great Ball in the kitchen trash. Right after we do our Vermilion Mart trip, but grab extra repels. These will be used as soon as we catch the first encounter in Rock Tunnel's lowest floor to ensure our level 17 Onix. Nothing else changes until Silph.Co, where we make a quick stop for self-destruct, and then on the top floor deposit Rock Tunnel catches, useless key items, and then grab the Master Ball. Once in Fuchsia, we immediately take down Koga so that we will eventually be able to surf during our Safari Zone sessions, which we start right after the battle. The first pass goes directly for the Gold Teeth and HM like normal, except we don't need a repel up so long as we don't fill our party before getting a level 25 for the upcoming trick. Upon getting Surf, we immediately teach it and can go right back to Area 1 to get our Trick Setter. After this, we stick to Area 2 for the dreaded Kangaskhan hunt, which I was lucky enough to get on my second attempt, while also catching our 2 level 33 Nidorinos. Then we simply surf over to Area 3 and catch whatever is still needed in terms of Rhyhorns and Nidoran. Getting back on the speedrun path though, we head to the Pokemon Mansion, making sure to grab the Moonstone and both candies in the basement. We also won't teach Blizzard now, as we have an extra battle over in Celadon. The Rocket Grunt front guarding the HQ. Since we skipped the hideout during a normal run thanks to the Pokédoll, we still have to defeat this rocket to then grab another candy, after which we teach Blizzard, dig out, and bike right over to the store where we get all of Giovanni's 12 guard specs and a few more X speeds before spending the rest of our money on Super Repels and Great Balls for Dugtrio. We then follow the run to take down Erica, but before going back to Blaine, we quickly stop in Fuchsia for Strength, teach it, and grab the next free candy. This is also a suitable time to fly back to Cerulean for the final cuts from Paris, letting us head for the power plant to get Thunder and a rare candy. But the next edition isn't until Victory Road, where we simply grab another candy on the first floor, leaving the final adjustment being our league team, as we will deposit Paris and make any adjustments to enter with King, Squirtle, our flyer, the 25 Trick Setter, Nidorino, and Nidoran. Then after beating the game, we can take care of the last few tasks, repelling, leading with our level 25 Mon, and flying to Vermilion to go catch Dugtrio. We then make our nearby Nido trade before flying to Cerulean and going for our legendary. Inside Cerulean Cave, we find the final candy on the first floor, and then on the bottom, we switch Nidoran to the front and take on a few battles until it levels before using our Moonstones on the two Nidos. Then we can teach Queen Body Slam to have both movesets completed. Afterwards, simply Master Ball Mewtwo, dig out, and fly to the league to prepare for the grind. But of course, there are a few things left to keep in mind during this long section. First, we will start the grind with one of the Pokemon in our current party, Nidoking or Queen. Next, we never end with a Rhyhorn. This is because we would have to finish our loss to get out and candy their final levels, compared to ending on any other Mon where our timer would stop once we hit that last level. And speaking of, we have to know how each of these final levels should be gained, as we can calculate the amount of experience each Pokemon will need in its last Lorelei battle ahead of time to shorten the run a bit. Now, this isn't worth forcing unfavorable situations like self-destructing on Cloyster due to the small potential time save compared to the high risk of a time loss. Instead, some Pokemon can simply just be skipped to save the switch and Mewtwo hit. For example, Kangaskhan will need 3,475 experience at the end, so if we go ahead and remove switching on Cloyster, we get just enough from our regular endpoint. This Cloyster skip will also be done for Queen and our particular King, while the non-evolving Rhyhorn will instead remove Slowbro from its battle. Now Onix, Dugtrio, and the eventual Rhydon all need so little EXP in their final runs that we can just self-destruct on Dugong to get it, leaving just Nidorino, who will sadly require a full final battle to hit 37. But this brings up the last question of the challenge, who to end the run with, as whichever Mon we choose will save us as much time as their final knockout would have cost. And despite Kangaskhan being a solid choice since its final battles against Lapras are never favorable, Nidorino is even worse since it's the only Mon Lapras can use Confuse Ray on. Thus, we finally get to become Giovanni by getting our last levels with the single Pokemon that we are destined to leave behind. So that's how fast you can become the evil Team Rocket leader, Giovanni, in Red and Blue. After 8 total team members and 6 hours, 17 minutes, and 31 seconds, I have to say this new challenge has been a ton of fun to put together and quite a lot of work. But if you want to know about any other Giovanni appearances, which let me tell you get absolutely absurd, or better yet, have other trainer suggestions for the next episode in this new series, please let me know down in the comments. Overall, I would love to hear what you thought of the episode. The heart of this challenge was very in line with our catching series, but it's been a while since I got to experiment with something a bit new. I would love to keep trying things like this, and some other projects that you've all heard a little bit about before too, so definitely let me know what you think. But with that, thanks so much as always for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and more to come soon.